Control C, Control V. It's Ofsted's favourite key.
Hello, welcome back to another At the Chalkface. And today we're returning to one of our favourite subjects and one of your favourite subjects as teachers. It's Ofsted. And today we're discussing the fact that, and this probably shouldn't be a surprise to a lot of us, that an awful lot of the text that ends up in an Ofsted report is, dare I say it, cut and pasted. We're going to get into that and unpack it a bit more, but we do have some interesting stats for you. I saw the number of Ofsted reports where entire sections and paragraphs are identical, and they do state very valid reasons why they do this for consistency. But let's dive into it. So I'm going to hand over to Dave. Ofsted, yeah, cut and pasting reports because they can't be bothered to write them themselves. Go on.
No,
I'm being provocative. I'm being provocative.
Yeah, it's not quite like that. Let's be fair. But for the people that are listening to this, maybe we should take a little bit of a step back before we take a step forward.
Sure. Go on then.
So Ofsted is the Office for Standards in Education. They inspect schools approximately once every 4 years. It does vary, but approximately a school can expect a visit from an inspection team about once every 4 years. And they are going to review the school and they are going to judge the effectiveness of the school. And it used to be that they would give a one-off judgment, whether the school was outstanding, good, requires improvement, inadequate. That's all gone now since November 2025. And there's a new report card system where they essentially grade the schools on a 5-point scale against a number of factors. So that's the backstory. As a result of having done that, they then produce an inspection report. And this goes to the school and it tells them, just the data about the school for the public. And then it tells what the school is doing well, and it says how the school could improve. And there's a standardized format to those reports, as you would expect for standardization. So no big deal there. Where the big deal comes in is that if you actually read what's written in these reports, then you quickly discover some very familiar sentences and some very familiar paragraphs, which makes it look like they just cut and paste. And as Craig says, that's because they can't be bothered to write their own reports. Craig, come on. You can't say that. Break it down for us.
No, okay, I'm being unfair. I mean, it was Adrian Gray, education consultant, former inspector, and he identified that there were identical paragraphs appearing in approximately 1 in 9 reports, and acknowledged that systematic reuse of large bodies of text. Now, if we leave it there, this sounds unacceptable. I mean, this report, Dave said, goes to schools, but it's made public. Any parent, any person can go and read the report. And, I joke this is a highlight of the teachers' careers. It really is not. Any inspection framework, whether supportive or not, puts extra stress on already stressed professionals. So when these things come along, you've gone through it. It's like, well, at least write me a personalised report. But okay, let's be balanced. There are some valid reasons. These are national inspection frameworks. They're held against all schools, other than private schools. And so, if you quiz Ofsted on this, which you were, they will say it's to make sure there is central quality assurance and standardization, something we talk about in schools, consistency of marking within your department, across departments, risk avoidance in high stakes inspection language, not saying one thing one way to one school and then one thing another way to another on the same issue. And obviously to get this standardization alignment. So sure, there are valid reasons that you may present this. And I was being flippant, obviously, but there is also some genuine annoyance over it. I mean, you, Dave, when we were researching this, highlighted a wonderful paragraph which made me giggle. It's one of these things, isn't it? When you say something, but you actually say nothing. So listen to this, right? This wording, Dave, I know you pulled it out, appears in 12 different inspection reports covering completely unrelated schools, the same wording. And I love this. Leaders and those responsible for governance should sustain the effectiveness of their work in all areas. Yeah, sure, of course they should. They should seek continued improvement, overcoming barriers and challenges in order to drive a transformative impact for schools and pupils. Yeah, of course they should. No teacher or professor. It goes on, by the way. I won't read the whole thing. You've told me.
Oh, indulge us, Craig. Come on, we need more of it.
You want the last cut? I'm like, okay, so far you're telling me nothing useful. You're just outlining the obvious in wording which sounds, I don't know, fairly flamboyant and impressive, but there's no real action. This includes disadvantaged pupils. Oh, that's good, because we'd forgotten those until you turned up. Those with special educational needs. Oh, yes, you're right. Better pay attention to those as well. And disabilities. Those who were known or previously known to be children in social care. Oh, as teachers, we completely forgot about the kids in social care. And those who may face other barriers to learning. Well, it's a good thing they put that paragraph in the report. I'm being very flippant now. But it is. It's a paragraph which really says nothing. It's not useful. And this is, I guess, I don't have anything against what I was arguing in defense of Ofsted earlier, but that paragraph would give me nothing as a teacher, especially as a senior leader, with how to improve the standards in my school, whether that be the delivering of teaching, consistency, safeguarding, student attainment, or whatever. It's a nonsense woolly sentence, a paragraph, and it appeared word for word identical in 12 inspection reports to fill out the report. So I feel like I'm now maybe being a bit unfair to Ofsted, and maybe teachers watching this are going, "No, you're not." What's your take? No, okay, go on, Dave.
No, I don't think you are. I mean, look, we'll talk about our own admissions in a moment about writing
Sure,
reports, okay? But you do want some standardization. You
of
don't want
course.
an inspection team going into school A and drawing conclusions, and then a different inspection team going into school B drawing different conclusions. And effectively, the two schools really are quite similar. You know, it's unfair. It'll come down to then which inspectors and inspection team you got, how they wrote their report, and blah, blah, blah. So you do need some kind of standardization that you can then make sure that what you're telling one school is sort of commensurate with what you're telling another school in the same context with the same challenges. It does make some sense, right?
Yeah,
But it has to be meaningful, right? I don't mind them saying similar sentences for consistency. I can understand that. That makes sense, especially when it's so high stakes. Yeah, I mean, you alluded to it
yeah.
earlier that these inspections are so high stakes for schools; they can make and break careers, especially for
Mm.
head teachers. And so it's really, really important that what they write is true, accurate, reliable, valid, all those words we would expect with a decent piece of research. And so I don't mind them writing similar sentences, but what they must do is make sure that those sentences at least relate to practical things a school can do, right? I used to be infuriated. It would happen sometimes when I was being observed, Craig. And, you know, I'm very proud to say more often than not, my lessons were judged as, you know, outstanding in the old days.
Yeah.
And then sometimes good. But not always, you know. I'm a human being like everybody else, and occasionally I would have a satisfactory lesson. And let's be honest, right? When no one was looking, I guess a lot of my lessons were satisfactory. You know, let's just be honest
Yeah.
about it. But what would infuriate me is that I would get, say, a good judgment, and they would typically have boxes to tick, right? And so they tick number two in that category, number two in that category, and say, you know, the top value was a one.
Yeah.
And then there would be an opportunity for a feedback conversation, which is really, really valuable. You know, all
Hmm.
teachers want to improve their practice. We're all a little bit embarrassed at the things that didn't go quite as well as we would expect them to, but we're all human and we're all there to learn from each other, and that we can all learn, right? Craig and I
Yeah.
still are learning even now after sort of 30 years in the classroom. But it would infuriate me, Craig, when I would get a tick in a two box, which was good, and then I would challenge the observer and say, So if it was good, what did I need to do to make it outstanding? What was the missing component? What wasn't there that could have been there? And when they couldn't tell me, I it
Yeah.
used to make my blood boil. I mean, do you have experiences like
I,
that?
I knew exactly where you were going, exactly the same thing. I had that both with own internal inspections from SLT, learning walks, or the dreaded word Mocksted. So if we don't have enough, let's prepare for Ofsted by doing a Mocksted from SLT, and from the real thing. And both times, whether it was my deputy head, who I got on very well, an Ofsted inspector, I would go down and seek them out if I didn't get an outstanding, not through arrogance, through wanting to know how to get better. And I'd take it a little bit sometimes from SLT, or I'd let them off the hook because I've got to have a good working relationship with them, right? I'd be like, okay, so you can't really tell me, but you felt it was a good, and let's unpick what. But when an Ofsted inspector couldn't tell you, it was a different level of annoyance, because you wouldn't be provided with opportunities for feedback, but it was always open that you could go and seek them and find them, and they'd be based somewhere. So I did that. And I always felt like maybe I was sometimes a bit of an irritant. We've got an awful lot to do and you want feedback. Maybe that's unfair. But I would do exactly that. I'd say, okay, thank you very much. I was really pleased, but why didn't I get an outstanding here? Or why it's a number of so you're an inspector using a framework. You're not SLT, who are trying their best but not trained in this, and they don't do it for a living. You're the Ofsted inspector. I haven't met the requirements, the standards, or there was something that happened in the lesson or the way I delivered it that meant this was good and not outstanding back in the days we got that. No problem. I'm happy to accept it. So what would you have changed? What should have happened differently to take it to outstanding? That's all I need to know, because on that I can build. And when they couldn't tell you I was just like you, well, then it's meaningless. Of course, what's happened now, well, quite a while ago, no longer individual gradings on lessons. Well, that's convenient, isn't it? Back in our day, you would be told your lesson was outstanding, it was good. Then it just became a whole school was outstanding or good at various levels. And as Dave said, that's now gone completely through a report card. So it's been abstracted, obfuscated. I would no longer know whether my lesson was good, which means I can't challenge it and get that feedback. But even when I could, I didn't. Exactly the same. It used to infuriate me. And I think that's why that paragraph is frustrating, because it doesn't allow senior leaders or governors to build or make improvements. It's a nonsense, woolly paragraph. Of course, everything in there school's going to do. We're going to care about SEN, disabilities, children with social care barriers to learning. We want to strive to improve outcomes across the school. That's not a useful paragraph, yet it's been cut and pasted into 12 reports. I think that's the area where me and other teachers would have more issues, not the fact that text could appear in more than one thing, as you said. They do need to
Yeah.
be standardised and consistent.
So when I read this initially, I had that. I had two emotions, right? My first was, what? This is outrageous. Shock, horror. No, this can't be right. How dare they, Ofsted, And I think that's because they kind of put so much pressure, and some would say intimidation, on schools. And I know they've done a lot recently, especially since Sir Martin Oliver's taken over as His Majesty's Chief Inspector. They've done a lot of work in trying to build rapport and relationships with schools, and it's not as bad as it once was, I'm led to believe. But it's so intimidating, and it can feel like a personal criticism when you're working so hard day in, day out to do your very best for these children. It feels quite insulting to be told that you're not doing the best job that you could be doing. So I had that initial outrage, which was that natural reaction that teachers of my age would have with a body coming to inspect what they do on a day-to-day basis with no real context and no real understanding of what they're actually doing and some of the challenges that they're facing. But it quickly was replaced, Craig, by almost a sense of guilt, where I felt to myself,
I know where you're going, Dave.
I know, I sort of felt to myself, hang on a minute, you're criticising Ofsted for copying and pasting reports, or, not whole reports, parts of reports. But Dave, isn't that how you wrote your reports? So let's unpack this a little bit, right? Because
Okay.
again, I think the public need a little bit of context here. So if you're a teacher of, say, English, maths, or science, then you might have 4 or 5 lessons a week with a single class. that means that if you've got 25 lessons a week on your timetable, and I'm doing all sorts of rounding here and making assumptions on school timetables, but let's go with it. Right, let's assume that you've got like 5 periods a day, 5 days a week. It's 25 lessons. It'd be slightly less than that because of non-contact time and other things, but let's go with it. Right. It means that you've got about 4 or 5 classes that you're responsible for, and you will have, say, 30 to 32 students in any one of those classes. Chances are, if you've got GCSE and A-level classes, you've got fewer students in the class there as well, and therefore, you have 100 or so students that you're looking after, a little bit more than that. But for a computer science teacher, which Craig and I are, then we have one lesson a week with a class. So now you have got 25 classes in a week, each with 30 to 32 students in it. Now you have upwards of over 400, 500, sometimes 600 students you are teaching. And here comes a bit of honesty. I don't know your child very well, because I see them for 1 hour a week. And because it's computer science, and they're working on a computer a lot of the time, I see the back of their head. So I might be able to recognize them from their haircut, but less so from their face in a strange sort of way. That's not strictly true. I'm being a bit flippant there, but you get it, right? I'm teaching upwards of 400-500 students. I don't know them very well. They're all doing the same work. They're all producing the same outcomes because I'm teaching them a body of knowledge, which they are then proving that they have gained that body of knowledge. And if I'm a good teacher, they will have gained the body of knowledge, because that's my job, to teach them this. And so when they reflect it back to me in their work, I'm seeing lots of very similar work. And so when you come to market and then write end of year reports, there's really only so much that you can say. And just for your own sanity, how do you write over 400 reports at the end of the year and make them all bespoke, individualized, give every single student, some real targets and things that they can genuinely do to improve their work? Well, that's what Ofsted have got the same problem, haven't they?
Yeah, this is it. And I can't sympathize more. And, I have to be careful here. I mean, as a head of department in my school, I was the only one who felt comfortable with teaching A level. I was the only one who felt comfortable with teaching GCSE, but I insisted all the other. I didn't teach GCSE in my school. I made all other 3 computer science teachers take a class of 10 or 11. They resisted it. And I said, well, no, because one day I will go. And if the A levels continue, this is where you start. So I'll just take the A level. But let's just take day simple maths. I'm a head of department, 25 lessons a week. So I've got 2 off for non-contact, plus another couple of being a head of department. I'm now down around 21. I teach year 12 and year 13. So there's 6 hours and 5 hours teaching off. I'm now down to about 5 hours of teaching. And in those classes, I had 10 in one and 7 in another. So I've now currently got a whopping, 17 students. Then I pick up something over here. I maybe had 90 students on my roster. Meanwhile, my good friend, who I started teaching with in the same year, actually taught all of year 7. So over the course of the week, he saw every year 7 class with 33 students in each. You have to, as a head of department, sympathise with that teacher. Oh, it's report writing. Craig, you've got year 12 and 13. Yeah, I do that in my PPA 17. Oh, it's year 7 report writing. I've got 400 reports to write. It's not fair and reasonable. So, you said you felt guilty. So what was the solution to that, Dave? Did you think, as a computer scientist and a hobbyist programmer, I could maybe use technology to aid me in this process?
Yeah, obviously I did. And
Yeah.
I had a bit of a realization, and this is common in education now, but we're talking back in the early 2000s. I had a realization that I was collecting a lot of numerical data on my students, and judging their work against various criteria, giving it a mark, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. And I realized that the accumulation of all this data when I was writing a report, all I was really doing was interpreting what those numbers kind of meant and turning it into just English sentences. So what I could do is essentially say, well, if you had a 1 for this, I can write this statement. And if you had a 2 for this, then I can write that statement. And I literally, built algorithms that enable me to turn all my numerical data that was in my mark book into sentences, and beautifully constructed sentences that if a senior leader or a parent read, they would think that I was the best teacher ever, because I obviously knew their child inside out. And what they didn't see, of course, was anybody else's report. So the parent, of Sam wasn't reading the parent of Becky. Sorry, you know what I mean? You only saw your own child's report. So they had no idea that in actual fact, I was just using very, very similar sentences for this. And of course, today, we've got AI, right? And now this is easier than ever. It can do an even better job than I was doing back in the day. But originally, it just started out with me having a Word document and having some statements in it. And I would literally highlight, copy, paste, change the name of the student on the report, add an extra sentence here or there where I felt there was something specific to say. Go on, I know what you're going to say. Go on.
If I know you, though, that wouldn't have been sufficient. A comment bank and replacing names in a Word document wouldn't have been sufficient, would it? Well, the other thing I was going to say was, when you do it that way, you risk the awful situation where you use male and female pronouns for the wrong students. All of a sudden, your daughter James and your son Rebecca, you have to be careful. So I bet you thought to yourself, can I develop a little piece of noddy homebrew software to help me with this? Or I know the answer already, because you were an access database nut when you were at school.
Go on. Bring it. Let's bring it on the screen. I
remember this. Oh, the CraignDave version. I forgot.
All my dirty laundry out to wash for the benefit of everybody else, right? So here we are. This is the tool that I then built. And so I would put in the name of the student. This was in the day where the gender was just male or female, right? You got to bear in mind, this tool is, decades old, right? But I'm just showing you how it is. So Sam, and then I would start my prompter, and it would give me one of 3 sentences. Sam has enjoyed the challenge of computer science. Why not? Let's go for that. Okay. And then what do I want to say next? And here I'm being prompted with, 5 statements that I might say. And so it goes on, and I just click. Okay. And then they were going to make a computer game, to create a computer game. And this is where I could end up with a little bit of something bespoke to the student if they've made Space Invaders or Pac-Man or whatever they've done. Click OK. Carrying on with this. And you'll notice that essentially it's just a 4 or 5 point scale for each of these comments, right? So if it was the top student, it would be the top comment. And if it was, they were not so good, they'd be on the bottom comment. And I'd be able to sort of select whatever I want to say. There we go. There is a beautifully constructed report, Craig, which I can copy and paste, and it will read beautifully.
Yeah, and let's and let's just bring this back to what we were discussing then, because is this a bad thing? No, of course it's not. Now you've got personalised feedback that means something to a student and to the parent. And indeed, it would be unfair of me to suggest SLT didn't appreciate the workload. One of the biggest things in schools, other than obviously raising achievement, is reducing the workload and the work-life balance of teachers and the stress around there. And it would be unfair to say SLTs didn't appreciate that across the country. Ours did. We had a system, I won't bore you with the details, we had a management system in school for writing reports, and it allowed you to put your own comment banks in there to make it easier. It already knew the gender pronouns for the student because it was all in the system, so it would write those for you. So, we were given those tools. So if we use those personally, and indeed they were encouraged and supported by SLT in order to write reports that had meaning to the parents and the students, then we shouldn't be too surprised, should we, that we're finding cut and paste sentences and paragraphs in Ofsted reports. I guess is where you were going with your initial, I'm furious at this. but I've been guilty of it myself. It doesn't get over the nonsense paragraph issue, though. I mean, I think everything in the report should be helpful and constructive and tell the school how to progress and how to improve. Otherwise, I feel like you're just writing words for word's sake. So I don't think it justifies that for me.
No, I do agree. I think there has to be a sense of consistency, as I've said earlier, but you've got to give people something tangible to work on. Okay. And if there's genuinely, nothing more that you could possibly do or say, then it's fine to state, continue the good work. Do you
Yeah.
need a massive flowery paragraph that doesn't actually say anything, but just says all the things you should be doing anyway as a school? No, I think it would be fine to say, this is an exceptional school. Carry on the good work.
Marvelous. Well, look, there you go. Ofsted using Control C, Control V. Tut tut. Bit more nuance than that, but there you go. Any closing thoughts and opinions, Dave, before we finish up?
No, not really, Craig. We're we're all trying to find the shortcuts because we all want to do the best job that we can. And do you know what? The best job that we can do is not writing words. It's what you do in front of those young people, making a difference to their lives on a daily basis, not the words you write.
There you go. Couldn't agree more. Well, thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next week at the Chalkface. Bye bye for now.